When it comes to putting together a CD set, it's important to control the objects in your drawing. And it basically makes drafting quicker and more efficient. So in this video, we're going to learn about one of the best ways to control your drawing, and that's with layers. Now, even though layers are found on cakes, onions, the earth, your skin, the atmosphere, and a good many things, these aren't the kind of layers I'm talking about, at least not for AutoCAD. But I do want you to take the metaphor of layers into what I'm about to teach you. And we briefly touched on layers when we made the def point layer back in Unit 1. And what I want to do is kind of take you further into this command. So I have the final floor plan of our Unit 2 project here in front of us, and as you can see, it's very colorful. And you'll notice that like items are the same color. For instance, all of the interior walls are yellow. The ceiling stuff is all green, the furniture is all blue and dashed. Just think of each of these objects, all of the doors for instance, being drawn on a transparency. You guys remember transparencies, right? You know, those old school contraptions that teachers used to use back when dirt was new? Well, anyways, instructors used to write on a clear sheet of plastic paper essentially and project their drawings onto the screen, and sometimes they would even put transparencies on top of each other so that you could see multiple ideas at once. It kind of reminds me of that first Iron Man movie when Tony Stark was supposedly designing a missile, and in all actuality he used several pieces of paper to draw parts of the first Iron Man suit. Separately they looked like different pieces, but when he put them all on top of each other, you could see the Iron Man suit. Remember that? Well, it's the same concept here in AutoCAD. When we draw floor plans in AutoCAD, like the one that you see here, it's like a zillion transparencies displayed on top of each other. Okay, maybe not that many transparencies, but you get the picture. Just think of a layer as a transparency paper. Anytime that you assign an object to a layer, you are essentially putting it on the same transparency paper as other objects with the same layer. So all the doors should be assigned to a door layer. All the windows should be assigned to the window layer. Separately, they look like a bunch of random doors and windows placed, but when you put them on top of each other, the puzzle pieces begin to form a picture. Again, it's a control thing, and having control of your drawings is right up there with being quick and efficient. So let's look at this floor plan here. If I select all of the doors in this, you will notice in the ribbon that the layer is called a door. If I were to highlight all the interior walls, they would be assigned to the A wall interior layer. And all the furniture, if I highlight those, are assigned to the I fern layer. So there's two reasons why we do this. We put like objects on the same layer so that we can turn them on or off as needed in the final paper space sheet. We use the colors to control the line weights of those objects. This thought is kind of starting to change a little bit, but there's still a lot of firms in our field who stick to that tried and true notion that architectural drawings need to show differentiated line weights. Walls should be thicker line weights than doors or furniture. I will get to the color control in the next video, but first I want to show you how to add layers and how to work with them. So to add a layer, we're going to go to the Home tab, Layers panel, and select Layer Properties. This new window kind of pops up, and it shows all the layers that this drawing is using. Yes, this is a lot of layers. This is typical of most floor plans because you draw everything in this one plan, and every type of object needs to have a layer assigned to it. Now I already set this drawing up, and that's why these layers are showing. On your screen, you should probably only see layer 0 and possibly the def points layer if you added that from Unit 1. You must manually add each and every layer for your drawing. So exciting, right? And that should be done first before you even start the drawing. A really bad habit to get into is to draw your drawing in layer 0 and then go back and change them all into the layers that the objects need to be drawn in. You're going to be much quicker and more efficient if you switch layers as you draw. So remember, don't draw everything in layer 0. Always go to the correct layer to draw that object in. Just trust me on that, okay? So looking at this layer property manager, you're going to notice that most of these layers are named with the letter A. A stands for architectural layers. They have to do with the building itself, and most firms name their layers with the letter A first. Now, furniture, on the other hand, it starts with the layer I, which stands for interiors. It's just a method our field uses to separate what's architectural and what's not. The general guideline is that if the item is built in or attached to the building, it is architectural. A case could be made for like A equipment to actually be I equipment, as equipment's not typically attached to the building. But things like casework, like kitchen cabinets or plumbing fixtures, they are attached. So again, it's kind of a loose guideline. It's not necessarily a rule, but for the most part, everything gets A except for furniture. It gets an I. You'll also notice that there's some architectural lingo being used. Instead of cabinets, it's casework, which is abbreviated as case in the list of layers. A glaze means glazing, which is a fancy word for windows. You are free to make up whatever you want to for each layer. Typically, a firm is going to have its own lingo predetermined for you. So again, you gotta be a chameleon and understand that everyone does things a little differently, even layer naming. So there's no real standard in the industry. You just follow suit with whomever is in charge and you'll be good. So in this case, you're going to follow what I'm having you do just for the purposes of learning. So let me go over this toolbar for a second. You're going to notice that there are various columns with different sets of information. The first column is the status of the layer. It shows which layer is currently selected to draw with. So in this case, I currently have, let me bring this over a little bit. I currently have A equip as my current layer to draw with, and you'll see over here there's a check mark for A equip. It just lets you know which layer is being actively drawn with. The next column is the name of the layer, and you do have to name each and every one of them. The third column is the on or off, which has a light bulb. Now you can turn layers on or off on the screen if you'd like to. The light bulb will show gray for off. We do the door. Gray for off, and yellow for on. Next to this column is the freeze column, which is very similar to on or off. It's represented by a sun for on and a snowflake for off. Now, I tried to freeze the current layer that is up here, and it says, hey, you can't freeze that because it's the current layer. Thanks, CAD, for letting me know. So let's freeze the door. There's the snowflake. Isn't he cute? Now the layer on, off, and the layer freeze command, they do separate things, but it actually has more to do with X referencing, which we are definitely not talking about in Unit 1 or 2. So if you need to hide a layer from view while you're working with it in model space, you can either hit the light bulb or the snowflake. In that case, they're pretty much going to do the same thing. Next comes the layer lock column. If you lock a layer, that means you're not going to be able to highlight that object or move the object that's assigned to that layer. They're stuck, or essentially they're locked. It's a good choice of words. You can also control what colors the layer will display in. Now if I click in a color box, let's do the door since we're there. You'll see this little window pops up with all the available colors. Now AutoCAD is going to recognize these colors as the colors that can be assigned a line weight. The rest of the colors are not assigned a line weight, so it's really important to remember that. You really want to stick with these 9 colors. I'm just going to hit cancel. And moving on, the next column is the line type column. Most lines are continuous in a floor plan, so that means they're not dashed, they're not doing something strange, they're just a straight continuous line. But things like upper cabinets, shelving, furniture, they are usually shown visually with dashed lines. So this is where you would go to select the type of line that you want to draw. So if I wanted the door to have a dash line, for instance, I just click where it says continuous. And right now I have some that are already pre-selected, but for yours you probably should only see continuous. So in order to get more line types, you just go into load, and you'll see there are a lot of different line types to choose from. I prefer choosing the ones that have the ×2 on them. I still need to kind of work with them a little bit in the properties of that line, but for the most part it gets me what I'm looking for. So here's dashed ×2. Since I already have it, I'm going to hit cancel, and there it is, dash ×2. I'm going to go ahead and cancel, and The next column I'm going to talk to you about is the line weight column. And this can get a little bit tricky. So if you want AutoCAD to recognize colors as a specific line weight, you have to keep these at default, and you'll need to use what's called a plot style in the Page Setup Manager. If you don't want to recognize the colors as line weights, don't use plot style and instead come in here to control the line weights of each layer manually. We're going to use a plot style, so we're going to leave all of these at default. The next column is transparency, and we're going to leave that at 0. Generally speaking, there's no need to mess with transparency when it comes to drafting, at least the drafting that we do. The plot style column has to do with what I talked about earlier, so don't worry too much about that column. The next column controls whether or not the layer will print. Now, if a layer you want to print is not showing up in Print Preview, you should definitely come here first and check to see that the layer the object is on is set to print. That's the first troubleshooting tip for layers I can give you. Notice how DefPoint has the printing turned off, but the rest of the layers are turned on. If at any point there is something that you want to turn off from printing, you can definitely check it here. And we won't worry about the last two columns right now. So the first thing you should do is enter all of these layers into a new document. So be sure to type units first, and then go to the Layers Property Manager. Click the icon that looks like a piece of paper with a little ball of sunshine on it. That's the Add a New Layer button. And you will see that a new layer, if I click on that, a new layer forms, says Layer 1. If I double click on the name of it, it allows me to rename that layer. I can decide what color it needs to be. I can decide what kind of line type it's going to be. And that's all there really is to making a new layer. So go ahead and pause the video, start updating the information according to the list given to you in the workbook or from your instructor. Know that you may need to add layers in future videos. This is just really to get you started. Once you have them added, continue on with the video. Alright, so you should have all the layers in. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now if I wanted to start drawing, all I have to do is come up to this scroll bar and I can pick which layer I want to start drawing with. So let's do a wall interior, for instance. Once that's selected, then I can start drawing, and you'll notice that the layer is already assigned to that line. Be sure that before you block any furniture or object, make sure that that object has all the correct layers assigned to it before you block it. If you try to change the layer of a blocked object after the fact, it does not appear to change. So be sure before you block to get all the layers correct. Now what I like to do is to demonstrate some of the control that you can have with layers. So you will not have this available to you on your screen. So I want you to watch this and really take note of this demonstration. I'm going to focus in on the floor plan and I want to freeze a layer, which means hiding a layer from the view temporarily. So to do that, I just click on the icon up here that looks like a little piece of paper with a snowflake attached to it. That's the freeze. My cursor becomes a box, and let's say that I want to hide the furniture. All I have to do is click on one object that has that layer attached to it, and all of the furniture temporarily disappears. Be sure that when you select an object that you actually select the line and not the space inside of the table or chair, for instance. So what I'm going to do is just to kind of show you what happened, I'm going to go back in here to the layers property, let it update, and then you can see down here that it did actually make it a frozen layer. Now I can come here and unfreeze it by just clicking on that snowflake, turning it back into sunshine. I'm going to minimize that, and lo and behold, the furniture is back. Guess who's back? Back again. iFern's back. Tell a friend. Okay, that was really lame, but you get the point. Now I'm going to freeze that one more time just to kind of show you what to do. Hit escape. If I want to bring anything that's been frozen back up again, I can click on this thaw all layers and it brings that back. Now if I wanted to turn that layer off, it's this icon right here. It's the paper with the blue light bulb. I can turn that off, and then to turn it back on I have to use the turn all layers on. It's the orange light bulb and it comes right back on. Now if I want to isolate a layer, meaning I only want to see objects assigned to that one specific layer, choose the isolate button, which is this one with the downward arrow. Again, my cursor goes to a little box, and all I have to do is click on the object or layer that I want to see. CAD will say, hey, do you want to select any other kind of layers? No, I think I'm good, CAD, so I'm going to hit enter. And now you can see that every layer has literally turned off, and I'm just seeing the objects that are considered furniture. Sometimes plans can get so big that you just really kind of need to focus on certain things in the plan, and sometimes it's just easier to turn everything off and isolate layers as you need to. To unisolate everything, you choose the one that's right below that with the upward looking arrow, and everything's back. Back again. So that was isolate. Let me show you what the make current button is all about. So if I, for instance, want to start drawing more furniture, currently I'm in A wall interior, but maybe I want to be in A furniture. Yes, I could go all the way up here and sort through all of these to find the I furniture. Oh, there it is right there. Or I can highlight the layer that I want to work with and click make current. As soon as I do that, you'll see that the ribbon updated itself, and I am no longer in the A wall interior. I'm in the iFern, and I can start drawing furniture. The last little thing I want to show you is the match layer button. So let's say I've got these two lines, and I actually did want this layer to be a yellow one. Now I could highlight it and go up here and do the A wall interior, but a quicker way would be to do the match layer. So I'm going to click match layer. I'm going to select the object. Hit enter to tell CAD I'm done selecting objects. And then CAD says, hey, okay, what's your destination layer? Well, I want it to be this one. So I click, and voila, I now have the same layer as this one. Now you might be thinking, this is all great, but how am I actually going to use all of this? You're going to use it when you're drawing your floor plan. You aren't going to want all your layers turned on when you're drawing. So for instance, when you're hatching ceilings, you don't want any objects in the middle of your ceiling, so you need to turn things off like the furniture and the casework and such. You're also going to use these when it comes to working with the sheets that you draw in paper space. So like I said before, I only drew one floor plan. All the layers and all the objects are located on this one floor plan. So I'm going to go to the construction plan, to the furniture plan, and to the ceiling plan. As I go from sheet to sheet, you probably notice that not all of the layers are showing in every sheet. Some are turned on and some are turned off. See? Every sheet is supposed to communicate something different about the same building that's going to be built. So the idea is to keep all the layers on in model space, and then you control which ones are visible or invisible in the paper space sheets. As you progress through building the CD set, you're going to see how all of the layers are going to show up in the viewport at first, and then you have to go into each viewport and turn the layers on or off as necessary. So for instance, here I am in the construction viewport, and if I double click inside the viewport, and then I go up here to layer properties, it's actually right here, I'm just going to maximize that. You will notice that I have one set here of layer information, but then all of a sudden I have this other set that was not available to me before. This side is for model space. This side is for that particular viewport. So if we look at iFern, for instance, let me move this over a little bit here. Just so you can see what's going on. There we go. There's no furniture in this construction plan, right? And there shouldn't be. It's about construction. It's about the placement of walls, not the placement of furniture. So in model space, that layer is turned on, but in the viewport, that layer is actually frozen. So you can kind of see how every viewport you can decide what gets shown and what doesn't get shown. Pretty slick, right? You're going to understand more about layers the more that you use them, but for right now, we're at a good place to end. If you want to, draw a whole bunch of lines and assign different layers to them and practice all the methods I showed you, the turning on, the freezing, the thawing, the isolation, how to make them current, how to match the layers together, all that kind of stuff. And remember, You should be changing out layers as you draw. Never draw in layer 0 and then reassign the layers. That's a bad habit. Get into the good habit now as you begin to work with them. So in this video, you learned what layers are, how to add them, how to configure them, how to work with them in model space and in viewports, and how to assign layers to objects.